perhaps there really is hope rekindled. Today, Pope Leo XIV received in a private audience Cardinal Leo Burke, a symbolic figure of the most traditionalist Catholic world. What did they say to each other? Is it just a gesture of courtesy or the beginning of real change? This news will touch the hearts of all attentive believers. Stay until the end, because the hidden details of this encounter may surprise you more than you imagine. Today, in the austere corridors of the Vatican, a meeting took place that seems destined to leave a much stronger resonance than the sobriety of the official statements would suggest. Pope Leo XIV received in a private audience Cardinal Leo Burke, a symbolic and controversial figure of traditionalist Catholic resistance. The news, released in the press office's usual dry language, says nothing about the content discussed, but is enough in itself to raise questions and expectations. This is not, in fact, a mere formal hearing. When two protagonists so charged with ecclesial significance meet behind closed doors, every gesture, every silence, and even every omission becomes a message. Official discretion amplifies the symbolic weight of the event. Anyone familiar with the recent history of relations between the Holy See and the traditionalist world cannot help but sense a palpable tension in this meeting. On the one hand, a pope who has chosen a simple, Christ-centered preaching style. On the other, a cardinal who for years has defended the Latin Mass as a bulwark of identity and continuity. Nothing leaks out of the words exchanged, but the mere image of those two men face to face is enough to conjure up turning points that until recently seemed unthinkable. Today's hearing is not an isolated incident, but the culmination of a series of signals that in recent months have paved the way. Already in June, Cardinal Burke had publicly asked Pope Leo XIV to intervene to restore full dignity and freedom to the traditional Mass in the Roman Rite, which many faithful continue to consider the beating heart of their Catholic identity. His words were not simple declarations of intent, but a heartfelt appeal to put an end to a persecution, which in his opinion had relegated the ancient cult to the margins of ecclesial life. A few weeks later, in July, a gesture arrived that surprised and disoriented many. The Pope personally wrote to the Cardinal to congratulate him on the 50th anniversary of his priestly ordination. In his letter, Pope Leo XIV did not limit himself to a formal greeting, but expressed words of sincere appreciation for the fidelity and care with which Burke served the Church and defended canon law, recognizing that he also played a role of comfort for the dicasteries of the Roman Curia. An act that, read between the lines, marked a sort of truce after years of tensions and misunderstandings with his predecessor. Yet what's most striking isn't the meeting itself, but the silence surrounding it. No detailed statement, no official declaration, no hint of the conversation's content. A void that cannot be accidental, and precisely for this reason, fuels conflicting readings and interpretations. In the Vatican, where every word is carefully calibrated, what is left unsaid carries as much weight, if not more, than a high-sounding statement. For some, the silence is a sign of ongoing negotiations, delicate matters that cannot yet be revealed. For others, it represents the desire to let the very act of the hearing speak for itself, without the need to add anything else. In any case, the message being sent to the Catholic world is clear. The question of the traditional liturgy and the role of Cardinal Burke remain open and on the table, and the very lack of official explanations transforms the event into a puzzle that keeps observers and faithful alike in suspense. The possible developments following this audience are many and all potentially disruptive. Many observers wonder whether Pope Leo XIV is preparing a revision of the motu proprio traditionis custodes, easing its restrictions or even overcoming them altogether. Such a gesture would mark a historic turning point, reopening celebratory spaces for the Tridentine Mass and restoring faith in those who in recent years have felt marginalized. Another hypothesis, less radical but still significant, is that the Pope intends to initiate a process of gradual reconciliation, made up of targeted concessions and more attentive listening to traditional communities. The hearing with Burke, in this sense, could be only the first step in a broader process aimed at healing a deep and painful rift. Furthermore, the possibility cannot be ruled out that the Cardinal, thanks to his international prestige, could become a stable and recognized interlocutor in managing the liturgical question, thus transforming a conflict into an unprecedented collaboration. So far, however, it cannot be said that Pope Leo XIV has shown any willingness to dismantle restrictions on the ancient Mass. Despite Cardinal Burke's personal gestures of concern, on a practical level, everything has remained unchanged. Traditionis Custodes remains fully in force. Authorizations continue to depend on the bishop's discretion, and in many cases, restrictions have even been tightened. This is a reality that faithful attached to the traditional rite know well, and which makes the signs of openness even more difficult to interpret. This apparent paradox, a pope who extends his hand with cordial gestures, yet makes no mention of the laws that limit the ancient liturgy, is the key to understanding today's audience. Is this the beginning of a real dialogue, or merely a symbolic gesture? The contradiction remains open, and perhaps it is precisely there that the future of reconciliation between Rome and the traditionalist world is at stake. Although the situation remains marked by uncertainty and contradictions, it cannot be ignored that figures such as Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Miller continue to represent a point of reference for many faithful who do not want to give in to the logic of liturgical surrender. Their voices, at times uncomfortable, remain a living testimony that the Church is not only made up of documents and decrees, but also of pastors who have the courage to defend what they believe is essential to the Catholic faith. At a time when many feel disoriented, their example keeps a flame of hope alive. It is not a naive hope, but rooted in the conviction that truth cannot be erased with a bureaucratic act, and that tradition is not a museum relic, but a living treasure to be preserved and transmitted. For this reason, even when official decisions seem to point in the opposite direction, the existence of voices like Burke and Miller's reminds the faithful that the fight for the ancient Mass and for doctrinal clarity is not yet over. It may be a minority, but it is not silent. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you